I've been kicking around this, and I've read this, and a couple of people have told me this over the past couple of weeks, that one of a part of Biden's appeal to African Americans is that here was a, relatively powerful white guy in his 60s, I guess, who was willing to have a black boss and basically be, like second fiddle. Do you think that has any resonance in the African American community as to why Biden's appreciated to the extent that he is?
Not insofar as that, he was willing to have a black boss. When the whole primary first started, I actually went around talking to a lot of people just in my neighborhood, just doing a little impromptu. It's like, who's on people's minds, who's not on people's minds. And the names that I heard, especially from older black people, even in Brooklyn, even amongst like people just in my direct, engagement, was Biden and Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, because they kind of liked his passion and his being animated towards like social justice, etc. But Biden specifically because Obama picked him, and they felt that was sort of a stamp of approval. Like, hey, you know what? This is somebody that Obama would not mind replacing him as the president of the United States of America if the worst case scenario happened. The calculus that Obama chose him to kind of, ingratiate himself with the older, more right wing, especially on issues of social equality and race, part of the Democratic Party is kind of lost to a lot of people, but that sort of like Obama said this guy is all right is very much a big part of Joe Biden's appeal. And I would also argue it's a big part of why a lot of people are, beholden to trying to defend Joe Biden and Joe Biden's past and Joe Biden's present, past the point where I think it's reasonable. It's because it has to be like protecting Obama and protecting Obama's protecting the precision. Exactly. Protecting the opinion of people that Obama was making the right judgment call when it came to Joe Biden. When in reality, I mean, it was a calculation that may or may not have paid. I mean, it paid off because he won, but a calculation that paid off. But like the actual calculus, I think, has been lost. It's become like, oh, Joe Biden is just a trustworthy person.
Okay, so with that said, Brandon, and let's play this clip. We have a clip of I'm sure that you're aware of. Joe Biden was on the Breakfast Club with Charlamagne da God, and so if that's the case, that Biden he had this imprimatur from Obama. He has this imprimatur from Clyburn, specifically South Carolina. A lot of that went a long way to getting Biden to, and he hasn't quite secured the nomination yet, but and hope springs eternal. But assuming he does, that's a big part of it. Here he is on with Charlamagne the God. I think he was joking here. I think. But the problem with Joe Biden's joke here, if it is a joke, is that it fits the formula that he said to many people on the campaign trail. And which is like, this is my standard. You don't want to vote for me? Don't vote for me. But he's not, doesn't quite land a joke here. If I was Joe Biden's campaign people, I would have been like, if you feel like you're about to make a joke about something like this, probably better not to. But here is the end of that conversation.
Well,
Thanks so much. That's really our time. I apologize.
You can't do that to black media.
Pause it for 1 second and start at the beginning. I should say there's a third voice you hear that I think is in Joe Biden's living room, where his press handler is saying like, hey, we have to move on, which of course, that's standard fare. Usually what happens though, like when you're doing a radio interview, is they'll stand behind the candidate and they'll go, we got to wrap it because he's got to go do something or something like that. But here, so that's what that voice is. All right, go.
Well, Thanks so much. That's really our time. I apologize.
You can't do that to black media.
I can't do that to white media and black media because my wife has to go on at 6:00.
Okay.
Oh, I'm in trouble.
Listen, you got to come see us when you come to New York, VP Biden.
I will.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
It don't have nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with the fact I want something for my community.
Well, I guess that's all we got there from the end of that clip. But, so, I mean, I I feel like he was trying to make a joke. I don't want to, do a joke construction thing. Like, it's hard to know what the laugh line part of that was, but what's your take on that?
Well, I just want to say I haven't watched The Breakfast Club since they replaced Molly Ringwald with Charlamagne the God, so I'm not the foremost expert on this.
Right.
I will say I think that Molly Ringwald will have challenged him a little bit harder there, but that's just I don't know. I don't want to impugn anyone's character, but I mean, sure. If it wasn't a joke per se, let's say it was meant in jest, right? Let's say it was meant like he wasn't serious. Like you're literally not black if you don't vote. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Why not? It seems fair. I think the problem for a lot of people though is that reflects a certain level of entitlement that Democratic Party specifically feels to black voters vote essentially. And I think Charlamagne's response to that was, maybe not as forceful as I would have been, but like true. It's like, it's not about being, it's not about not knowing about Trump or not. It's about like, well, what are you actually offering the black community in trade for their vote? Like the idea that you have to actually earn this vote or reciprocate on this block of voters that you feel as though is, the core of Democratic Party's electoral strategy in many places. Like, hey, you know what? We got to have the black vote. Then there should be some kind of reciprocation there. But I think largely speaking, just within our culture, the idea that the Democratic Party, that politicians are responsible for like reciprocating a level of, I don't know what you call it, reciprocating some sort of positive benefit for your vote has kind of been eroded. I think we've seen this slow supplantation of the American people as like voters and citizens who have rights, who have like, hey, you know what? If I vote for you, if I vote for Obama, it's if the black population votes for Obama, if the population of X votes for Obama, it's reasonable to expect that Obama or Joe Biden might do something for that population. I think it's been kind of a transition to Democratic Party, their base, their voters as fans. And it's like, and fans aren't entitled to anything in reciprocation for their support. They just are expected to do that per se.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, on just a purely rhetorical level, right? I mean, the argument, and I happen to think that there is some truth to the argument of like, you got two choices, me or Donald Trump, if I'm Joe Biden, and I'm better, I mean, than he is. I think that's true.
That's fair.
I think it's incredibly lazy and indicative of being not a very good candidate if that's your pitch, right? Like if that's your pitch, and this seems to be basically the whole premise of his campaign has been like, you got two choices. It's going to be me or Trump. If you don't like me, go vote for Trump. And, I happen to think that's true. But I think that doesn't necessarily mean that that's like the best pitch for you to go forward, because you still have to convince people to vote for you. And you need to offer them you need to show them why that's the case. Telling them is not necessarily the most effective thing. Like I say, I think it's true. But I don't know that, that's the best way to make that case to people, particularly, I mean, I think there are things you could roll out and say like, well, wait a second, we have a lot of truth here, but, you could say something to the effect of like, look, we have, there was a poll that came out today. Well, 3 times more African-Americans and Latinos know somebody who's died from COVID than white people. And you could get into the structural reasons for that. And you could get into the societal problems. And you could say, like, look, now it's not as funny or in jest, but you could say, like, I'm committed to doing X, Y, and Z that Donald Trump would never contemplate doing. And, even if you like, and maybe there's there's a dark, funny way of making that joke. Like, if you're voting for Trump over me, you're going to get your black card revoked or whatever, like dumb 19, I don't know when that was, that whole meme, but you're going to get that revoked or at least stamped or something like, just some dumb joke. But if you can't execute that joke, don't do it, for God's sakes. Just be serious.
You should leave the problematic racial humor to the professionals like me. But no, I mean, I think Charlamagne, I think that you're right. I think that, we can look at this objectively and say that like the Democratic Party in many ways are better than the Republican Party. Like, that's just that's an undeniable fact. In many ways, they're not better enough. In many ways, they aren't better. But like, just if you're looking at the total picture from like in a vacuum, they are better. However, I think Democratic Party's brand, at least their electoral viability, has always had the undercurrent of like, well, yeah, but if you're not with us, you're with them. That was one of their bumper stickers too. And like, so at the core of their vote, at the core of their party's electoral strategy, is not structural change. It's not, expanding Social Security. It's not, establishing new bureaucracies or new institutions or new agencies to correct social injustice. It's just, we're the other guys. And they rely on a large part of the people, they rely on that kind of gap of proactively defining themselves to allow for their voters to sort of fill in the blanks. Well, if the Republican Party is racist, then we're not racist. The Republican Party is this, then we're that. This sort of oppositional the definition of themselves. However, I think that what that strategy kind of forgets is that like people don't have to vote. It's easy to try to shame people into voting, but yeah, if you're not with Donald Trump, you're with me, or if you're not with me, you're with Donald Trump. That kind of works as like, tautology or cyclical reasoning. But, people aren't trapped into a binary decision. They can just decide, well, Donald Trump is bad. Joe Biden, Democrats are feckless. They're effete. They don't really offer me anything. So I simply won't vote. And I think Charlamagne the God, whatever problems he has, just by nature of not being beholden to like the sort of political media, like apparatus, probably knows plenty of people who just aren't going to vote. Who are like, oh yeah, I'm not going to vote for those people because whatever. I mean, like they're not doing anything. I voted for Obama because Obama was black, or I voted for Obama because Obama was saying progressive things. Joe Biden's not offering anything, and is not offering any of that, and he can't even be bothered. I think and this speaks to sort of Democratic Party relying on Trump.
Yes. I think that's the key. I mean, you're going on a show. It's like you're not going on Chris Hayes's program.
Yeah.
Right. Like you're not going on, you're not on with Joy Reid. You're on with a largely like, an apolitical show for the most part. And you're reaching, a lot of potential non-voters, and you've got to give them a compelling reason. And he failed to do that. I mean, that's just like poor campaigning. But
it is. I mean,
Joe Biden.
Like even if I were to say, okay, well, yeah, Joe Biden has this platform, I don't particularly believe that he's going to be proactive in enacting all things. You could at least try. I mean, you could at least try just from like agnostically from my position as somebody like, I'm not really into Joe Biden, but I can recognize that try. Like, people give people opportunity to believe you and believe in you if you really think that they can. But, in this case, like we're seeing, I think Democratic Party's viability stripped down to its barest bones. We're not them. Don't look too closely at what we actually are. Just sort of like fill in the blanks yourself. They don't want to say anything too like strict or concrete that they might define themselves as. Instead, it's like we're the party of not Trump. And so, but I think you have to at least engage with the fact that for a lot of people, that's simply not enough because they don't recognize in their life the difference between living under Trump and living under Obama as anything than a slow trajectory downward. Maybe it ramped up a little bit, maybe it didn't. Maybe it sort of went worse faster. But there hasn't been just a time where they can recognize it just doing better, like doing better because of Democrats.
Brandon Sutton, folks can find you on Twitter on Pretty Bad Lefty. And they should tune in. How many times a week are you doing the discourse? One time a week?
I do the discourse twice a week or more, depending on how often I can wrangle someone to talk to me. So, I mean, you can find we have one episode that came out this week and last week with David Dayen. That's free to listen to. I have another episode coming out probably tomorrow or Sunday with Andrew Perez, editor who works with David Sirota. And so, tune in if you're interested. And of course, you can always become a patron too so I can afford to fund better protesters to open up gyms.
There you go. Where can people become a patron?
Well, you can become a patron of the discourse at patreon.com/expand the discourse. I thought it was catchy at the time. It kind of, it's a little bit, corny now, but still.
Yeah. Well, you can't change that. Brandon, thanks so much for your time today. Appreciate it, man.
No, thank you. Always a pleasure. Don't shave the mustache.
I thank you. And I think we're gonna somehow make a meme out of that jug.
I mean, it's just the way I live my life. You know?
And you freeze it? Is that a big ice cube in there too?
No, I forgot that I left it in the freezer, and so it froze. And now I'm just forced to deal with that. You know,
I like the idea of that whole thing, though. But
you know,
Brandon, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.